Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this review we are looking at the figurized Dragon Ball GT Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta. Now I know a lot of you guys have been very excited about this line. They're getting some releases that don't exist in the Figure Arts line, so it's kind of nice if, for instance, you wanted a Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta. This is kind of your only option for an articulated one, so it's an exciting time if you're a Dragon Ball collector. Now, this is not an action figure, though it is a model kit, so there are some things we need to talk about from that perspective, and then of course I'll be reviewing it as a kit as well. So let's go ahead and get it off the stand and take a closer look. Okay, this guy stands just about 7 inches to the top of his hair, about 5 3/4 to the top of where his head would end, which makes him about 15 centimeters to the top of the head and about 18 to the top of the hair. Now, I don't have any of my figure arts here to compare him to. They've all been moved already, all my Dragon Ball ones anyway, so I can't show you, but I can tell you he is taller. He will be out of scale with your figure arts, unless you want your SS4 Vegeta to be taller, then it'll be okay, but it is not to scale. You should know that it is bigger. It's also not painted in any way. Like I said, it is a model kit, so there's no paint on it. These are stickers. We'll talk about that as we go. It is articulated, though, so you can use it like an action figure once you build it, but you do have to be a little bit more careful because it's a model kit, not an action figure. It's a different type of plastic, and you had to put it all together, so unless you glued it, technically things could come apart. Now, I want to point out, when I did the speed builds for these guys, I showed you guys those. If you haven't seen them, check them out if you're interested. I didn't use any tools to take them off the sprues. You are supposed to do that, and I did that for a reason. I've had a lot of people ask me if these things are good for kids, if they're accessible for kids, if they're usable for kids, and so the reason I did that is some parents may not want their kids to use tools. They may want to just give them the kit and let them build it without any risk of bodily harm. And they also want to know if the thing can stand up to that. So I just yanked every part off the sprue so I could test it out to see if it would work. And yes, if you want to get this for your kid, it seems to me, now it's of course a case-by-case situation, you can probably give it to your kid and they can probably build it without breaking anything and without hurting themselves, without using any tools. Of course, if you're a collector, you definitely want to use the knife or the clippers to take the parts off the sprues. It would definitely be ideal. It is worth noting, the figure itself, I didn't have any issues with breakage, but if you are having your kid take it apart without using any tools, these clear parts are 10 times, if not a billion times, more fragile, and they can easily break. These parts not quite as much, but this one right here, very easily broken if just pulling it off the sprue. So it definitely should be done with adult supervision or with tools or both. But that way you guys have an idea. They are kid friendly. They're very basic kits and it can be done. But obviously if you're a collector, you want to use the proper equipment. All right, so let's talk about accessories. We do have a few. As I mentioned, we have the 2 energy effects and the display stand. So the stand is adjustable. You can move it up or down. It has little grooves in it and it has a hinge at the top. So you have the big green clear one. I don't know what the names of his moves are when he's Super Saiyan 4. I don't remember. I didn't pay that much attention in GT. Then we also have the ball, which he can hold, which they're very nicely done. They're nice translucent but vibrant green plastic, so that's cool. We do have 2 interchangeable faces. We have the standard face and we have the yelling face. And the yelling face does require a sticker for the tongue. Not sure why they did that. They could have very easily just made it part of the kit, but it does require a sticker. It is fairly simple to get it lined up though, so it's not really a big deal. So no problems there. And then we do have some interchangeable hands. We have the 2 fist hands, 2 open palm hands, and then 2 finger pointing hands for the fusion dance or whatever it's called. I don't remember. It's been too long. So that's it for accessories. Not a whole bunch, but probably enough. Now, as far as the sculpt goes, these guys are very nice. They're very similar to the styling and to the look of the figure art. So if you're into that, then this is good. It will require paint if you want it to look particularly good, but they did a good job of making it acceptable as it is, so no real problems there. As far as the articulation goes, it's technically not bad, but in practice, some of it doesn't work that well. We have a ball peg at the top of the neck, or at the top of the head for the neck, and then one at the bottom to move around the neck itself. And they work, but you're not going to get the most range just because of how bulky the hair is. So, I mean, that's expected. That's how it goes. But it's okay. You can move it around enough, so that's fine. For the shoulders, we have a butterfly joint, which works very nicely. I mean, you're not going to get the most range out of it, but it's there, so that's good. Then you have your ball peg that connects the shoulder to the butterfly joint, so that'll move around. And then you have your hinge that lets the arm fly out however you want. Note that it is not a finished sculpt here, it's just flat, so that it goes in like this and looks nice. but it's not a finished sculpt, so that's something to be aware of. We do have a bicep swivel, which works nicely. We have a single jointed elbow, which does give you pretty good range because of this kind of slip joint. You don't really ever need to pull it all the way down, but as you pose it, it'll pull itself down a little bit, and it does give you a little bit better range. You'll notice pulling it down doesn't really help anything, so it's worth noting that it's not really necessary, but it does work. Then you have a ball peg for the wrist, which will move around just fine. You do have a ball peg in the upper torso, but it really doesn't have much range. It doesn't move very much at all. Same thing is true of the lower torso. You can move it around, but it's not as much as you might have expected, but it does work well enough, so that's good. It does leave some kind of ugly gapping, but it is a model kit again, so you're going to have to live with it. The stickers for the belt, they're good enough, and I think a kid could probably apply them if you wanted them to. It's okay. I would definitely recommend painting instead if you're an adult collector, but the stickers look fine and they fit nice enough. It's not perfect, but it'll do. For the hips, we have a hinged ball peg, basically the same as your SH figure art. So you can drop the leg down and then pose it. However, the way it's designed, the more you drop it down, the more of an angle the leg has to come out at. So it's not necessarily a great situation, but you can bring the leg all the way out to the side, so that's nice. And you do get a thigh swivel out of it, so it's not too bad. It'll probably do. And if you don't drop it down, the leg comes out fairly squarely. So I think that's pretty good. Then you have your single jointed knee, which isn't the best knee in the world, but it's definitely good enough, and you get pretty good range, so that's nice. And then for the ankle, it's fairly limited. You do have a hinge, which goes forward and back, and that works okay. And you have a peg to rotate it around for an ankle rocker, but due to the bulky sculpt and the design, it just doesn't really work very well. So very limited ankles. And then we have some more stickers down here, which again, I definitely recommend painting because these are uncurved surfaces, so they just don't fit nicely. They have the cut marks in there to help, but it doesn't help that much. It looks pretty janky for a collector. For just a kid putting this together to play with, I think it'll probably be okay, but it's not great. And lastly, we have the tail, which is just a ball peg, moves around nicely. Though the sculpt is a little weird, I'm not sure why they did it at an angle like that, but it still moves around nicely, and it just pops out if it has to. It won't break, or at least it shouldn't. So it's fine. And then there's a peg hole for the display stand if you want to get a display stand, but that's sold separately. So yeah, I mean, it's a nice kit. As you can see, it looks fine with me just yanking the parts off the sprues, but you could definitely clean it up if you're going to use tools, and then you'll have a much higher quality piece if you, I shouldn't say much, a little bit of a higher quality piece. But I think it's definitely a nice kit, especially for the price point. No problem at all. It's definitely not the most expensive thing in the world. It's not the most high-end product, but I think for what it is, it's fairly well done. Ooh, one thing I do want to point out before we go, for the faces, for some reason, and maybe it's just the way they designed it, my faces always have a little bit of a gap in here by the sideburn. And I went in and checked, I took it all apart, and I cleaned up everything to make sure there were no sprue tabs or anything like that. There weren't, it just doesn't fit perfectly, so be aware of that. But otherwise, it's a really solid set, and I think you guys will probably like it if you're into this sort of thing. Personally, I'm into the action figures, and I'm not really interested in kits, but I'm happy with it. So if that tells you anything, it tells you something. We're going to go with that. Thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. I have new videos up every single day. We talk about action figures, movies, TV shows, video games, all kinds of fun stuff. So make sure you come back for that. Turn on notifications so you don't miss anything. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it. And in the meantime, keep collecting.